And welcome to Politics 101, our Wednesday night edition. David Hinds here with you. Um, it's a beautiful Wednesday evening, and we are going to have quite a show tonight. It's the 10th anniversary of the uh, Linden shootings, 2012. People were shot at in Linden. 3 persons were killed as part of that struggle over electricity subsidy. And on Monday, the people of Linden uh, observed the event with activities starting in the morning and ending with a public meeting in the evening. Sorry I couldn't make it. Really wanted to be there because on that evening, that night, when the people were shot at and the people were killed on that bridge, I was there. I was there on the scene 12 years ago, quickly, 10 years ago, quickly, time flies. Welcome to Politics 101. Want to urge you to share the link. Share the link. Please share the link. Last night, we had some issues, some copyright issues, and so we were kicked off by Facebook. We were able to finish the program on YouTube. And I want to say welcome to the audience on YouTube. We often forget that we had an audience. We had a live audience of close to 200 last night on YouTube. Some people from Facebook, when they realized that we weren't getting the feed over here, made it over to YouTube. But to the viewers on YouTube, good night and welcome to Politics 101. And to those of you here on Facebook, we want to say welcome, welcome, whether you're joining us from Guyana, or the wider Caribbean. A special good night to the people of Linden, because it's going to be your show tonight. We have quite a lineup. Mr. Lincoln Lewis, who, of course, is no stranger, trade unionist, Lindener, and who was also active in that struggle. Mr. Sharma Solomon, who that struggle, that event 10 years ago threw him up to national prominence as a leader, and he's joining us. Apostle Nigel London, another Lindener, he is also going to join us, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that Sister Vanessa Kissoon will join us. She is, of course, she has a presentation this evening in one of her classes at the University of Guyana, but she promises that if she gets out of class on time, she will join us. She was along with Sharma, the other leader that was thrown up by that protest. So we have quite a lineup tonight, and we are going to be talking, reflecting on that incident, that massacre, of some people have called it, and we are going to look at where we are 10 years later. One can, of course, talk about from Linden to Golden Grove, because here we are in Golden Grove on the 10th anniversary of what happened in Linden. We are the same struggle. And you know, I remember on that day, on the bridge, all day, the acting commissioner of police, the current acting commissioner of police, Mr. Clifton Hicken, was there. He was on the scene at Linden. One Mr. Watts was on the scene at Linden. I remember speaking to Mr. Hicken, engaging myself and Comrade Aubrey Norton, and I think Lincoln might have been in some of those conversations, but he was trying to ask us to get the people off the bridge. And we had to remind him that it was not our struggle. The people, Linden conducted their own struggle. And so we were not going to tell the people what to do. And several times during that day, he engaged us. And I remember the last conversation we had was close to about 5 o'clock or thereabout. And I remember getting the distinct impression that something was up. Something was up. Mr. Watts was also there on the scene. So here we are, 10 years later. Mr. Aiken is the acting commissioner of police. Mr. Watts was on the scene on 2 Tuesdays ago as the marchers ventured out of Golden Grove. And is it history repeating itself? Same actors, different situation, same actors, different situation, same actors. Welcome down to Politics 101, Monday, Wednesday evening. Please share the link and join us. We have sorted out the issues from last night. Please share the link. Quite a day for me at some meetings, and then I'm now just getting here from groundings with some brothers at Orange Walk. Not quite Bamba Mali, but they're on Orange Walk, who requested myself and Brother Kadaki to go speak with them. And we could only spend an hour because we had a meeting, WPA meeting ending at 3:30, and we had to rush down to get there at 4:30, and then I had to leave at 5:30 to rush up to Buxton. But they were grateful. They requested us to go, and they had questions, and they peppered us with questions. They also had their own criticisms of the leadership of the opposition, our tenure in office. They were critical of us. They are critical of us at the moment. The bottom line is, the complaint was that they do not know. People do not know what's going on. People do not know what's going on. They're not hearing from their leaders. They feel that we have to go and talk to them. I want to say to you on this program that you don't have to wait for us to come to a public meeting. If you're in a community, whether it's in Linden or wherever, and you would like to have an audience with me, with Brother Kadaki, with us in the WPA, just make the request. Contact Brother Kadaki and myself, make the request. We will fix a time, and we will come and ground with you and talk with you, hear from you, and for you to hear from us and for us to answer questions. We have to be proactive on this issue. Just don't wait for the big public meeting and so on. Organized community, I don't care whether it's 5 people. In fact, whether it's 5 or 10 people, I'll be there, and I'm willing to come wherever we are invited, to come and begin this conversation. Because I want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. So don't wait for the big public meeting. Don't wait perhaps for the big leaders. There are some of us who are not the top leaders, but you come on to these programs, you listen to us, give us a chance to come to listen to you where you are. So my challenge to you on this program, those of you who listen to me 3 nights per week and on other programs, here is your chance to have me come to listen to you. Wherever you are, whether you're in the quarantine or you're in the Essequibo, it might be a little difficult. It may take some time to organize something that's far away, but whether you're in Georgetown or anywhere, just contact us and we'll come and engage you and have you engage us. One of the things I learned this evening from the brothers there, they are extremely angry that they're not hearing from their leaders. We come for big events or we speak on shows like these, but we don't go to speak directly to the people. And I'm saying, here is a chance. Here is a chance. Just get in touch with us, myself or Brother Kadaki. If you can pull together 5, 6 people in your community or wherever you are. We'll come down and we will engage you. We will talk with you. We were able to answer a lot of questions. People were a little bit confused, for example, about the petition. You know, how it got from the High Court to the Appeal Court to the CCJ. We were able to explain that issue in a way that our people wouldn't understand from the news clips or even the little write-up that they give in the newspaper. It's good. It was good to be on the ground and to walk our people through the process and understand. Because they asked Dr. Hinds, we heard the argument yesterday, what next? And I was able to explain to them what next in terms of the scenario. If the CCJ rules in this way, what next? If it rules the other way, what next? And I was amazed at how up they were, all of them, all 15, 20 of those men, they were all men, young and old, and others passed and saw us chatting and stopped. But I was amazed at how much they were up on what happened. All of them listened to that hearing yesterday and they could quote from what some of the judges say. And I think it is only fair that we, the leaders, go and talk to people and explain to them, answer their questions. Many of them were asking, so what happened to the opposition parties? Why are you all pulling this way and the AFC going that way and so on? And we were able to give them the good news that for the last 3 weeks, the AFC, WPA, PNC, and CAP and NFA, that we have been meeting not as APNU, AFC, and coalition. We have been meeting as individual parties. And that we have come to the conclusion that while the coalition might be dysfunctional, it doesn't mean that political parties cannot meet outside of the coalition, because the coalition was designed to fight election. And we are opening up now a new opposition front to fight the present, And so it was quite an experience for me, for Brother Kedaki, for us to go there and to speak to those people. They wanted to know what the cash transfer. They were up in arms. One brother said, Professor Thomas, give us a solution, and he was silenced by the government leaders of his own government. They were angry at the dilly-dallying when it comes to giving people money and so on. So we were able to listen to them. So if you're in this audience tonight, please, if you want Brother Kedaki and us in the WPA to come to talk with you, and we are happy to come there and to talk about our business, not WPA business, but the business of the people. Because a party has to be able to function in its partisan environment, but it has to be able to function in the larger environment. And so therefore, as one brother said to me as I was leaving, he said, Dr. Hinds, hope this is not the last time we've seen you. And the other brother next to him said, when it comes to Black people business, there's no WPA, PNC, AFC, or whoever. And we ask you to come here because we recognize that you are not fearful of speaking bluntly the Black people issue. And so whether you want me to come and speak about African Guyanese issues, or you want me to come to speak about general national issues, or regional issues, or international issues, I am more than happy to come to speak on whatever issue. So don't wait for the WPA to come and send around a Lauderdale saying, come out to WPA meeting. Get together with your friends, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and invite us, and we will come. And for those of you who are overseas, with the technology, if you have friends, people of like mind, who would like to dialogue with us, just get in touch with us and there is Zoom, there are all these things that we can have meetings, because that's what politics are about. We do this mass meeting every night. We speak, the guests speak, and you listen. But you now can break yourself out into small groups and have a more intimate dialogue. There are things that I may not want to say here, but in an intimate meeting with our comrades, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of you, I am more likely to say some things and more likely to go into more details. So I'm throwing that out to you. This morning, I had to scold some of our comrades who were saying, then we must stop intellectualizing and let's come to the end of the struggle. And I have to say, intellectualism is a blessing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. God bless us with intellect. And we must not degrade that intellect and urge our people to act brainless. We have to intellectualize how to get out of enslavement. This mighty sparrow said, every time I tried to escape, the whip and the dog was there to stop me. But then I went back and I started to think again how to make a brilliant escape. A vintage calypso called I'm a Slave by the mighty sparrow. And I'm saying that is intellectualizing. When you listen to a classic calypso or you listen to Bob Marley saying we are what we are and that's the way it's going to be, you can't educate for no equal opportunity, talking about my freedom, people's freedom. In every man's chest beat a heart, says Brother Bob. He's intellectualizing. My brother Rex Nettleford, Professor Nettleford said, we in the Caribbean, we have not given the world skyscrapers or big bridges and large towers. What we have given the world is our minds. That is why these small spaces, a small space, a little Guyana, in a matter of 40 years, can produce a Fobbs Burnham and a UC Guyana, a Martin Carter, a Teddy Jagan in one generation. And the next generation can produce a Clive Thomas, a Walter Rodney, a Rupert Murray, small spaces. But we have given the world our intellect. Every history student in any university around the world has to read They Came Before Columbus by Ivan van Sertima, a Guyanese. How Europe underdeveloped Africa, a Guyanese. Capitalism and slavery, a Trinidadian, a West Indian. And where do we get off saying that we intellectualize? God bless us. That is why we have taught Guyana. Our foreparents came out of slavery and they set up their churches and their schools. Prepare us to teach this nation, and we continue to teach this nation, and black people who may be frustrated at getting off and down, but intellectualization. It's true intellectualization that a poor little boy from Boston Bottom Station, like me, who this world had condemned to poverty, would speak here tonight because of intellectualization. That's one of our strengths. I want to say to black people, sometimes we yak too much. God bless us with this. There are other groups that are jealous of us because of this. And we are sitting up here and talking about you all stop intellectualize and put boots on the ground without brains. It's useless. Boots on the ground without brains are useless. And so I want to say tonight, don't give up. Don't give up. Don't become brainless, because when you become brainless, that's when you run behind hampers. Somebody come and give you an hamper, and you're running behind hampers because you've given up your ability to intellectualize your condition. I'm not talking about academics. Anybody can get some doctorate from IFLOT or some foolish little university. Some little boy who can't talk properly, who can't string sentences, can get a degree. I'm not talking about degrees. I'm not talking about academics. I'm talking about intellectualization. Native intellect of the farmer who understands the smell of the soil, who can look at the canal and tell you something about irrigation. That's the intellect. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about academics, because they have a lot of people with academic degrees that they buy. You can't buy intellect. You either get it or you don't get it. Intellect comes out of the experience. Brother U.C. Kwayana says, we who call ourselves academics, we take the people's experience, we refine them, what we call research, and then we give them back to the people as intellectual and political nourishment. That's intellectualization. When Martin Carter says, this I've learned, today expect tomorrow hero monster, you are consumed. Like a jiggy shake loom, like a web is spun the pattern, all are involved, all are consumed. I dance right here on the walls of prison, I dance, says Brother Martin Carter. No, I will not still my voice. I have too much to lose. So if you see me looking at your hands or listening when you speak or marching in your ranks, know that I do not live to dream, but I dream to change the world. That's intellectualization. Experiencing, putting it in language that they can understand. And you all are sitting up here and telling us to stop intellect, right? Black people, know thyself. Get off that nonsense. You all are royal people. You all have given this world knowledge. You look at poverty and you ask yourself, how can we ride out of poverty? And a Clive Thomas could sit and intellectualize and say that the wealth from our oil can erase and wipe the scourge of poverty from our face. And you all are sitting up there and talking about the intellectualize too much. Stop it. Those three brothers at Linden who gave their lives 10 years ago, they gave their lives so that we may live, not to be brainless. That we may live so that we can think our way out of the nonsense that is imposed on us. And those people who would like us to stop thinking, they would like us to be brain dead. They would like us to fight against our own instincts. God bless you all, because you all were born with intellect. You may not own all the big wealth. You may not own the big casinos. You may not own all the big business. You may not own the houses of money laundering. You may not be able to afford a middleman like Mr. Sue, but God damn it, you have intellect. The elite intellect that you produce are here every day, every night, witnessing for you. Being a money launderer is not the only route to the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of God and the kingdom of plenty. There are many ways to skin. There are many routes to the kingdom. I'm not saying that we must not try to become entrepreneurs and to have money, big money. Yes, we must. Yes, we must. We must become entrepreneurs. We have always been entrepreneurs. We must not believe we must throw our brains in the canal and run to become a money launderer, to become a Mr. Soup. What is wrong with you, black people? Know thyself. Brother Dick Gregory said, what kind of fool is you, he asked, to say that you don't want intellectual conversation because you have a little computer in front of you. You feel that some or the other you have no use of brains. And so here we are tonight. We're going to be talking about our own victimhood. We're going to be talking about our own hurt. And we're not going to be talking about it to say that we were born victims. We want to talk tonight about how we use the example and the sacrifices of those brothers and sisters at Linden, dead and alive, so that we can unshackle ourselves from this temporary mess that we are in. We have moved mountains before. We have swum across rivers before. Brother Jimmy Cliff said, many rivers to cross, but I can't seem to find my way over. Sometimes I feel like committing some dreadful crime. But I keep on keeping on. We've crossed rivers. Bob Marley asked, when shall we see the face of God? When shall we see the face of God? We can only see the face of God if we resolve to open up, come out of the shadows, stand in front of those who want to mash you. We are what we are. That's the way it's going to be. You can't tell us but no one Guyana. Go to hell with your one Guyana. We are talking about one justice, one equality, one equitability, one value system where your life is as valuable as my life. That's what we're talking about. One Guyana, you can go to hell with that. Because you're using that to mask us. But Brother Franz Fanon gave us that simple 4 words: black skins, white masks. Marcus Garvey says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Only you yourself can do it. Only you yourself can do it. And you're going to do it with your hands, your feet, and the brains directing you. That's intellectualization. I own it, you own it, black people. Don't give it up to anybody. Don't give it up to anybody. You are not lesser people because you don't own businesses, big business. You're not lesser. And so tonight we come again to speak with one voice and to bear witness for us as a people, all of our people. All of our people. I thank God for being a Buxtonian. I thank God for being a Guyanese. I thank God for being a black man. I thank God for being a Caribbean patriot. All of my identities, I embrace them. I embrace them with all the might at my disposal, and nobody will tell me to erase anyone. I'm as black as I'm a Guyanese, and I'm as Guyanese as I'm Caribbean. Born in Buxton, when I'm in Guyana, nobody asks me, are you a Guyanese? You take it for granted I'm a Guyanese. They say, by where you from? I'm a Buxtonian. And as I travel, and I come off to in transit to Piarco, nobody asks me if I'm from the Caribbean. They say, where you from? St. Kitts, Nevis, or Guyana? My Guyanese identity kicks in. And as I disembark at JFK, nobody bothers to ask me if I'm Bajan or Jamaican. Are you West Indian? Are you from the islands? My Caribbean identity. And as I proceed to my place of employment, in the deep white belly of racist America, they ask me, who are you? I'm a proud black man. Nobody asks me if I'm Jamaican or I'm Buxtonian or I'm Caribbean. They look at me and they see that I'm a black man. In one day, I invoke all four of my identities. Let nobody make you afraid of any of your identities, especially your blackness. Never. And so tonight, we stand there invoking all of our identities. And my sisters are going to say, you've got to invoke your feminine identity, those of you, our sisters. And we males, we take our maleness for granted. But as this government seeks to emasculate all of us, our maleness will have to come out and be part of the struggle. Be part of the struggle. Do not confine me to some black man who's crazy. I'm not a crazy black man. Why must crazy be put before black? I'm a black man born in Guyana. I'm a black man born in Guyana. Long before Guyana existed, there was something called the Caribbean. The Caribbean. Christopher Columbus got lost, and he came here and met those Caribs, and he gave them the name, gave those islands the name, the Caribbean Islands. And of course, he got lost. He was heading for the east. And he got lost and landed there in the west to begin genocide of all of our peoples. And that's why he named there the West Indies. There was a West Indies and a Caribbean before a Guyana. And there was a black man and a black woman coming across the Middle Passage long before there was a Caribbean. Why must you give up any of your identity? We're going to make it work. Because this atrocity that is visited upon us, God will help us. God only helps those who help themselves. Let's go. Please share the link. Brother Lincoln, good night.
All right, brother. Good night. Good night. Good night to the viewers.
Brother Sharma, good night.
All right, good night, Dr. Hinds. Good night, Lincoln. How you guys doing? And good night to your audience.
And Apostle Nigel London. I want to say, we expect our sister when she gets out of class to join us. So it's not an all-man thing. We wanted to make, but we want to say that when you look at us up here, be proud of us. Be proud of us because you're looking at yourself. David brother said, I am the seed of Attila the On, and the seed of the mighty tiger and the roaring lion. We here are the seeds of brave people who overcame enslavement and indentureship and colonialism. We may not be East Indian, but we witness for the struggles of our East Indian brothers and sisters. Because when we laid down our lives on that plantation, we said slavery no more. Not just for us, but for our East Indian and Chinese and Portuguese and our Amerindians. each of us, all of us, have made contributions to where we are. Unfortunately, they try to divide us. But division does not mean that we must not witness for justice and freedom and equality. Sharma Solomon, I describe you modestly as a product of a moment. I knew that moment well. I know that moment well because I was there. Lincoln Lewis was often the driver. He used to drive a little too fast on the highway for me sometimes. But he was always the driver. There was always a group of us. Mark Benshop and sometimes Norris Witter, our estranged friend, whose name I don't like to call on my program. He would be there. We would come. And I watched as your people carved you and created you in their own image and said, go forth and lead us out of bondage. Your reflections of 10 years ago.
Good evening, Doc. And 10 years on, 1 decade. I must take this time to extend to the families of those who lost their loved ones, Alan, Shemrai, and Ron, to extend my condolences to them, to say to those who were injured that my thoughts and my prayers remain with them and will continue to be with them. We must remember that persons also were injured by the dozens. And even after the 18th of July, we must remember the viciousness of the People's Progressive Party days after to lay siege on this community and injuring many persons, shooting one gentleman in the face, Randy Tello, and shooting the legs of Ray Wills, almost taking it off on the 25th. So to those people and to the many traumatized residents across our community, I want to say my thoughts, prayers remain with you, and that we created a movement. And this is the point I want to pick up on what you made mention of, that it was a movement of the people of the region, of the people of the community, who came to a point of recognizing that they had had enough of the injustices that were being meted out to them by the People's Progressive Party. It was a moment, it was a euphoria of all that was going wrong within this community, all the violations of people's individual rights, constitutional rights, and the decision to exclude persons based on the principle of Article 13 was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think we recognize that as a bread and butter issue also of what the PPP wanted to do to this community after we had given such an electoral blow in 2011 in terms of reducing them to a minority government in this region, the sort of vindictiveness in the decision to impoverish this community. I don't believe we could have done anything else except to create a movement, and leaders and leadership was needed at that moment. So I was given the task to not only confront the People's Progressive Party, but to give leadership in that struggle. And I believe it was on a movement of coming together. People like yourself, Lincoln, the movement of union, of parties, of people that made that possible, that we stood victorious in that struggle. Unfortunately, we lost those 3 lives.
Apostle London, you are a man of deep faith, as most of us are, but some of us are more sanguine with the faith than others, and you are a man of faith. I want you to speak from that perspective. Now, as we reflect on what happened in that place that gave you birth, that home of what Walter Rodney called the cradle of the revolution. Linden, he referred to as the cradle of the Guyanese revolution, for good reason. Because if there ever is a place in Guyana that is Guyana, West Bobby's East Coast, Quarantine West Coast, it's Linden. Reflect on that ugliness of 10 years ago in that cradle of the revolution.
Thank you, Dr. Hinds, and to the noble gentleman here with me. I greet you and thank you for sharing this platform or inviting me to be on it. To your listeners and viewers, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak, and I'm actually happy that you asked me to speak from the perspective of my perceived expertise. But I must hasten to inform all that intricately woven in my faith is justice and righteousness. And the scripture records that Yahweh hates the wicked. He hates an unjust scale. And if we're going to apply any degree of attention to what happened 10 years ago, it has to be viewed from the platform of injustice. I thought about it upon the anniversary. And being a preacher, I could not help but become extremely angry to know that people were gunned down, massacred at that bridge. And though we may get there later on, I'm speaking to it from a spiritual perspective here and reflecting on the fact that a commission of inquiry was launched. And Mr. Wolf, the former Chief Justice of Jamaica, concluded that it was justifiable for police officers to shoot and kill people on that bridge. I find that to be most alarming, but also to confirm the fact that humanity across the Caribbean apparently would have lost some significant values for people. Because if anybody tells me that it is justifiable to kill people when they were standing for their very livelihoods or the benefit of their families and for their sustenance, and for people to respect the fact that Linden, as still is today, is strategically positioned and poised for discrimination. And if persons decided they were going to stand with that in mind, for anyone to say that that was justifiable, and then to recommend that these people would have been given the pittance that they received, the relatives thereof, it's frightening to know that we can sink to that depth as human beings. Linden must arise to also understand and conclude that the PPP Civic, as far as I'm aware, are yet to collectively apologize, seek our forgiveness and mercy for what they did to us here in this community, because they actually don't care. What is worse in reflecting is the fact that I've seen, and I told a young man today who shared, or yesterday, who shared much anger about the incident. And being a preacher, he said to me, Pastor, as he would call me, what are your thoughts on what happened 10 years ago? How could we get to this place? And what are your views on it? And I said to him, the fact that members and agents of the PPP Civic could come to this town, share things out and give handouts to people, and still be welcomed without an apology, continues to be one of the greatest issues that I have, with Lindeners especially. Something is wrong. We should never be accepting of any individual who have slaughtered people, shot in a crowd of children as well, or with children in people who were without weapons. And now they're welcome as though they're angels because they give baskets and handouts and apparently shake trinkets before you. There's so much to be desired that I don't have enough time to address it. But most importantly, I should say finally, that from a spiritual perspective, injustice is never remedied by silence or
Lincoln Lewis, I remember that night emerging sometime in the wee hours of the morning from where I was hidden by Brother Calendar, who passed away unfortunately a few months ago, who grabbed me once the shooting began and whisked me away somewhere, I think in 1 mile or half mile, I can't remember where it was. And as I emerged in the wee hours of the morning, trying to get back to Georgetown, there you were, emerged in from where you were whisked away. 10 years later, what's going through your mind?
I could have been shot because I was in the vicinity where the shots were fired. I was right there. And you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about the children who were 10 then, who were 8 then. They are now 18. Many of them have not experienced this. The mistake, we take for granted that they know, but many of them don't know. So we will have to make sure we educate people about the treatment that has been meted out to Linden by the PPP government. You know, a lot of people will not understand what went into that struggle. This was people's sweat, Lindeners primarily sweat over a number of years. This was the 4 wages. Electricity was the 4 wages by bauxite workers. And this government walked into Linden, break up the power plant, and do all these things, and don't expect to be questioned. And then tell you after, while there was an agreement that these are the parties that need to meet and determine the question of increasing electricity at that time, you break it up, and you say, you know, to hell was that. We are going to increase electricity charges, and you people will have to accept it. Well, the people did not accept it. And that is what we need to let the young generation know, that they will have to stand up and fight for something that is just and fair themselves. You know, I remember that night vividly, like it's yesterday it occurred. I remember when I tried to find, when I call you were still at Blueberry. And if people know where the bridge is, and where Blueberry, you were far away. And you traveled around and come around back and catch me. But let me say this. I believe it was a struggle by the people, as Sharma made it on. It was a people struggle. And it was a people struggle because I believe that Sharma's leadership at that time, he gathered around him a number of persons who understand the historical, not only the historical development, but understood the economics of what was taking place, and was able to disseminate this information to the citizens of Linden. You know, I was listening to you earlier, and you said that in your commentary, you said even if it's 5 people or 6 people come, you're going to talk with them, and you invite me to come and talk. Well, I want to tell you, I have news for you. I went to 1 Mile. I went down at the back of 1 Mile area where there are some farmlands. I'm looking for Sharma. That's before the shooting. It was leading up to it was the period of mobilization. I'm looking for Sharma. There's a Sharma get a meeting down there. When I go down, there's 3 people at Sharma, right? So I am raising that for you to understand that 5 you need to take 3 too, right? We need to do that because we need to educate these people, these young people, who, as you said, are somewhat ill-informed, misinformed about society and what ought to take place. But I tell you what, this government has blood on his hands, the Lindeners' blood on his hands. And we must not fall short at any time to remind them about it. Right? We need to do that. We cannot relegate these people who have fought valiantly over that period to hampers. We can't do that. We have to let them understand that it's an act of dehumanizing them. To say, hey, you fight to you, but we're going to determine now who will be your leader, and we're going to determine where you get, right? We have to fight, and fight we must. Thank you.
Fight we must, and I want to say good evening to Sister Allison out of Toronto. I had you in mind just a few days ago. We still have to get together and resume the work we had started that was interrupted by the pandemic. We had started to do work preparing to use technology to help our children. And we have to get back to that work, Sister Allison. So you're going to be hearing from me shortly. Sharma and Nigel, I want you all first, and then I'll get to Lincoln. Starting with you, Sharma, I want you to speak to two audiences. I want you to speak to the survivors of 10 years ago. We are the survivors, the Black survivors. I want you to speak to them. Some of them may be tearing up, some of them may be angry that nothing has changed. The more we change, the more things seem to be the same. And when you finish talking to them, I want you to talk to that audience that Lincoln mentioned, those who were 8 and 10 and 12, and they're now 18 and 20 and 20, who may have heard of the struggle, but not appreciate the intensity and the importance, because our people sometimes don't like to talk about the past. We don't like to talk about our hurt. We don't like to talk about our pain. So I want you and then Brother Nigel to speak to the survivors and then to speak to the children of the survivors.
Thanks again, Doc. You know, many times when we analyze what we acquired, what we achieved, the difficulty is that we lost those lives, as I earlier outlined, and those persons who were injured. But for what we struggled for, and I always equate this to, in essence, we could say, as we are about to get to the 1st of August, slavery was legal. It was legal to own slave, but was it the right thing to do? Was it the human thing to be done? To have people, human dignity, people rights violated, whether those are the human rights, their constitutional rights, their fundamental rights. Those are things I think when you look back as part of the victory, you cannot help but accept that we did push back against a government that was prepared to violate Article 13. We were involved. We got an agreement. We got an agreement first time between the central government and the local authority. We got a commission of inquiry. A commission of inquiry that said that on that fateful day, it was the police, the Guyana police force that did the shooting. They were held accountable. The state paid compensation as meager and as insignificant as it was. So the people who struggled then must appreciate, outside of those achievements, we went beyond that in an ideological way to move against a government. Further than that, in 2015, it was that sort of momentum that carried forward. The thing is, what did we do with the gains that we achieved? What did we do that we could have ensured that we don't return to a point where our constitutional right to have access to information continues to be violated? When those things were fought for and gained, we must ask ourselves, what did we do with the benefits of ensuring we remove a government that went against the principal right to life? We continue. So I'll segue to the now. So for those who struggled, there was no struggle in vain. It is what we did with those things that we achieved. For the now, it is because we haven't built on And we have not seen the dangers of not building on the now. See those rights continue to be violated, such as the right to life in a Quindon Bacchus, in a Orin Boston. Those are the things that we went to challenge any state. This is the principle on the fundament, to put the very theoretical aspect of the social contract theory of being an Hobbesian or a Locke philosopher that says if the state doesn't act in your best interest, this is principle article 13. And for those who are now not seeing the importance of ensuring that the state is held accountable, will have those violations by the Leviathan, which is the state, and not give people the sort of freedoms where they can exercise their rights. And that is where tyranny and injustice becomes more prevalent. And I like to just make the point on Pastor London and bring it to Lincoln's point of the justice we seek. The first place we start, and the good book said to us, I quote this many times, Psalms 31:8-9, that for justice and righteousness to be first done, we must be speaking, we must commemorate, we must not forget. We must ensure that the history of these stories are told and told in a manner that people can appreciate what needs to be done now. Because we will continue to cry for that sort of justice while we further receive the sort of injustices. A Quindon Bacchus. These are too many for us to continue to go in the same direction without appreciating we struggled in the past and we achieved. What we need to do is be prepared to make sacrifices now. And that is where our problem is. What are we prepared to sacrifice to ensure that we do not see that sort of behavior from a state that oppresses its people? And I believe personally that oppression is worse than death.
Apostle London, speak to the survivors. Do we give them hope that we won 10 years ago? And what do we say to the children for whom that moment may be just a dot in history? Speak to them.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to address such a forum, those individuals. First of all, I would say to those who survived this scenario, whether you should honestly consider yourself to have survived it, if you're still experiencing it. I can only survive discrimination if discrimination ends. It has continued nonetheless. Further to that, I must commend you for the fact that you, including my parents, by the way. I was living overseas with my mother and my father. I got daily reports from them. I saw them. They were serving at the bridge as well. They were there. Every day, my parents showed extreme interest in what happened in Linden. So I was well represented. However, I noted with much pride the unity that was able to be generated in this community. It has been a while since I would have seen, and I have not seen that since, Lindeners and other residents who are prepared to stand as one person, understanding one main theme, and that was that we're not going to be railroaded and thumped across the head by bullies. We were prepared to stand. My parents, pensioners they were prepared to stand among others to say that this is not going to happen here. We refuse to have anyone do this to us. And that potency of unity caused there to be a victory, though not long term. I hasten to remind those who stood that night and for those days that there is no reason to forget what was done to you. Do not forget the cause. Do not forget the effect of that cause. Do not forget what transpired. Do not forget what transpired at the hands of those who are still walking freely in our community, sitting, benefiting from pension in government, benefiting from many privileges, and walking as free men. We cannot forget there has to be a resurgence of passion within those who would have been through that, to say that we demand greater justice, to say that a young man in his, not even would have attained the prime of life, is only worth, in reference to his life, $1 million. That is ridiculous. That should have been revisited by the Granger administration, to say that just like you could give fishermen all the rest of it now, revisit it then and say that man, as young as he would have been, and those young men, they deserve, the family deserve to benefit from what we genuinely considered a fair price. There's no price in their life, but a fair reward for what they've suffered. That is yet to happen. So to those who have been through that, labeled survivors, I would admonish you and join you in fighting again for justice in the true sense of the word, because those of you who were shot on that bridge by police officers who are supposed to protect you do not deserve just to have notable mention made of you. You deserve to be remunerated in a sensible way, in a tangible way that is really just and fair. Further, I say to those who've survived and who've been through that experience, that you've got strength that you should have gained from that experience. Unity is the most powerful thing we can have in Linden. We're known for it. Let us not lose it. Let us not lose what brought us all there. We were united. We stood, even though I was in the diaspora then, I stood with you because I intended to ensure that my mother and my father, my siblings who were living in Guyana, that they do not receive any degree of discrimination and tyranny at the hand of political leaders and just lay back and say, well, it happens to us, so let's accept it. To those who are, or before I go there were deals made with you to get you to stop, and I would never forget them. And I can understand your discouragement today because there's no television station that you wanted to have. You were silenced and you are still silenced from speaking within your community. We have no licensing issue to us that's given to us to say you should generally start a television station. Indeed, I'm not talking about some promissory note. We should not lay back to say that we are now going to disarm ourselves from fighting because we were disappointed once. Let us never lose the right to fight. If there's one thing that I understand about my Linden people is that we would never, and I speak this with hope, lose the right to fight. The day I sense that we've lost that right, I leave Linden immediately, because I've returned to this hometown of mine, given the rich history of it, that we do not lose the right to fight. If you touch the right button, you will always get at some point from us the right response. To those who are young and you've not been reminded as you should have been, I would like to think you should be reminded as often as you can in a book of some sort about the atrocities that were meted out to your own people. Do not ever think that you're benefiting now from hampers and handouts at the hand of murderers, as far as I see them to be. Is anything acceptable? On your shoulders should rest responsibility for those lives that were lost, injuries that were experienced. Understand that Jaglu and anybody coming to this community to make promises to you without taking accountability for their actions should be rejected, because you should never be friends with those who are prepared to slaughter you for a bridge to be cleared. Friendship has value when people are valued. You are not valued by these people. I see them and I proclaim it today. In my viewpoint, I see them as murderers, because if you're going to do that to people and expect them to forget, this is an unhealthy relationship you're developing here. So the younger ones, take your time to reflect on the fact that over a bridge being blocked, people were prepared to murder you. And think further about the fact that if you were standing on that bridge now, I say again, some children were on that bridge and they heard the ringing of gunfire, live rounds fired at their person. Do not forget what an administration was prepared to do to you. This is your time to stand and to shine.
Apostle Nigel London, speaking truth to power. As I reported earlier on the program, I came straight to the program from a grounding with some brothers in Georgetown and Orange Walk. And I was able to hear from them firsthand, their frustrations, their anger, their criticisms. They listened to me. I listened to them. Brother Kidaki was there with me. They asked for us to go to meet them. And as I said, we speak from this forum, but we also should speak more intimately. Because it is in those intimate conversations that we're able to look each other eye to eye, eyeball to eyeball, heart to heart, and to speak our truth and to plan our truth. And so I am open to visiting. If you are in your community, and whether it's 10 of you, 5 of you, don't wait for us to come with a public meeting. Request for us to come, and I'm prepared to come. To talk at another level, to plan at another level, to mobilize at another level. This is one level of mobilization. This is the mass mobilization. And we need to do the other kind of mobilization. And so, if you need us to come, get in touch with me, get in touch with Brother Kidaki. I know he's generally more accessible than I am. And let us come. And even if you're living overseas and you would like us to talk, we have the technology now that we can talk. Emancipation is coming, the anniversary. 184 years since we walked out of that physical plantation. And ever since then, we've been fighting off the sharks that would like to eat us raw. 184 years have gone, and they're still coming to us. Now they're coming to us with hampers. You know, when you go to catch a fish, you put the bait in and you expect the fish. That's how they treat us. It's time for us to look ourselves in the mirror and say, we end that stupid. We end that less than human. We are not intellectually challenged. Why are you thinking that you can capture us with hampers? We remember the trinklets that they used on the shores of Africa. Are you going to allow them to use trinklets again? Buxton, my people, some of you fell for that nonsense. I've been quiet and patient because you reserve the right to make representation for your recreational facilities. And this morning, Brother Kidaki went to film some people in the next door community, Strathspey Bladenhall, PPP community, Indian Guyanese. Their roads are bad, they came out with placards. And when he went to make it public, they folded their placards and went in. They're not prepared to throw their government under the bus, even though they're hurting. And I hear some of my comrades say, well, Indian people are suffering too, and they're right. They're correct. But our Indian brothers and sisters are also afflicted by the fear that is stalking this land. The fear that is stalking this land. And so they folded their placards because they didn't want the APNU, as they said, to expose their hurt. They said that their government will fix their roads. But they have to come out with placards for the government to fix their roads. Fixing roads is a routine. It's a routine function of government. And you have to protest to get your roads fixed. Your government enter government. They enter government. And so therefore, Black people, selling yourselves. So selling yourselves for a hamper. Do not let history record you as a hamper generation or as a hamper people. No, you are more than that. You never begged the slave master for nothing. Nothing. Your foreparents fought the slave master. And when we won, and the slave master was bankrupt, we, our foreparents, the ex-slaves, lend the slave masters money to get out of his bankruptcy. We're saying that we knew we were always human beings. We knew that we were always human beings. And you had your knee on our neck for 200 and odd years. And now you're broken. And we are lending you money, which you are not going to pay back. You know what? To say that we are human beings with a conscience and a heart, with love. You all didn't know that piece of history, eh? That your foreparents came out of slavery and lent slave masters money to get them out of bankruptcy. The love, the overflowing of love. Sometimes people say it's all weakness. You know, but it says that we are human beings. And to move from that to become a humble people is the wickedest, unkindest cut of all. Is Brother Lincoln with us? Go ahead, Pastor. You wanted to say something.
No, I was okay. That's fine.
Brother Lincoln, we're getting the feedback there from
Yes, my brother, I'm here. Yeah, it's something from the road.
Okay, are we a hamper people?
Well, I will say no because I'm not one. I am not one, and I'm going to tell you this. People have to stand up and be counted in this entire process. Some people want to give the flippant excuse that people need it. Yes, you need it. Your need must not be transformed to a want, right? What we need is respect. What we need is that our resources that are due to us be given to us in a manner that we are respected and not being dehumanized. What they're doing with these hampers now is giving the impression that is the PPP or Mr. Ali or Mr. Jack Dio is giving like you or feel you should get this. So they give you. And that's why I always talk that these guys are at the point where they decide that they will elect, they will appoint who will be the leaders for the African community. And they will say to the African community, through those leaders, what you must settle for. We have to go right back and not only talk about or to take a position against that group of men and women, but those black men and women, those African men and women, or the men and women who look like us, who are part of the process of subjugating and dehumanizing us. We have to treat with them in the first instance. We have to start there. You talk about emancipation. What will they come to tell us? You talk about Buxton. What transpired at Buxton? I see just now, I see 2 days or yesterday or the day before I saw that 2 ministers are going to Buxton on Saturday. Yeah, I saw that 2 ministers are going to Buxton on Saturday. How they end up at Buxton? One newspaper said to them that the tractor that then they quoted you, Hinds, that the tractor that they promised Buxton, the people ain't get the tractor yet, but there's a tractor they said they would be delivering within 10 minutes 10 days gone. 10 hours gone, 10 days gone, and it coming to the 10 weeks. That is how they treat with us. Like with Buxton, what they did, they put the what we call it, they put two basketball and thing and a ring in a vehicle not too far away, and they set up somebody to ask for it. So when they ask for it, they say, oh, we can get it immediately. So they send over and the vehicle just take it up from the vehicle and bring it. You know what they want to do? They want to play with our mind, to tell us that we are a people who are concerned about you. Whatever you ask for, you can have it immediately. That is how the PVP behave. The time has come that we have to talk to our people and let them understand that this cannot be business as usual. Can't be like business as usual. We have to stop this sample thing. We have to go back and we have to call for what Professor Clive Thomas asked, suggested that we get. If we can't get 5,000, then give me 6. If you can't give me 6, then give me 7,000. And you understand me? Don't treat us like the money that we're getting from the natural resources belong to a few people, and we will say how much you will get and when you will get it and in what form. And the form that I have observed is the form of hamper. We have to stop it. We have to fight against those things. That's the point I want to make.
Brother London, you've been waiting patiently.
I have been, because I reflected on Irfan Ali's hypocrisy when he went to Boris Johnson. And he tried his best to say that Africans deserve reparation. And Ali, it ties into what I'm about to speak to you regarding back. Ali went all the way to England to say that Africans and descendants thereof are deserving of reparation. He heads or allows or sends or whatever it is. He's a part of the play. They're in Buxton. Am I to think, Irfan Ali, that the reparation that descendants of slaves deserve would in basketball hoops, basketballs, brush cutters? That's it. It shows how disrespectful you are. Because if you're genuinely concerned about the well-being of those of African descent, then you would have taken the time to ensure, although you can't do that since Jaguar is in charge, but you have tried your best to show that at least you're saying that African communities must be targeted, especially those that would have been suffering for decades, as you said, marginalized for decades. You could have said that instead of giving Fisher folk and whoever folk and all the rest of it, let's start with those who I was speaking for in England. Ali can never bring himself to do that. The PP Civic at its helm cannot bring itself to giving any degree of economic empowerment to Africans because they are inherently racist. They can't do it. They wouldn't do it. I must also speak to the Buxtonians, of whom my father is a part. I have rich history. My grandfather lived in Buxton. As the old people would say, he's turning his grave now, I'm sure. To see that you are prepared to accept disrespect in the name of care. Let me hasten to inform you all that if ever any entity called an administration seeks to give you handouts in the nature or in the manner that's being done in our communities, it's a sign of gross disrespect. Because what they're saying to you is that you're not intellectually capable of receiving anything of value. What you are capable of doing is receiving handouts that they determine its worth. Further that, as Mr. Lewis said, they were giving it to you and you assume that they are giving it to you. It is being funneled to you or channeled to you, but it belongs to the state. It is your tax-paying dollars that's being returned to you essentially in little tidbits. This is unacceptable. I also must say, Dr. Hinds, to all Guyanese, Afro and otherwise, who have an issue with being informed and education and being told, as you would often do, and I would try my best to do, about the richness of your history. If you despise it, you are bound to fail in your modern and your future endeavors, your present and future endeavors. Why would that happen to you? Because you should never despise wisdom. Do not forsake and abandon knowledge. It's important for us to begin now, I believe, to refuel our brothers and sisters, charge them with understanding that the more you know about who you are and where you came from, the better you should be equipped to fight in the future. That's my passion, what I wanted to say while we were speaking. Because 184 years ago, the claim was made that slaves were emancipated. But 184 years later, the descendants of those same people are shaking hands with the adversary to say that if you give us a little tidbit, if you give us a little biscuit here and there, we'll say that you did more for us than APNU. You did more for us than APNU AFC. They did not do more for you. They're giving to you because they've lessened who you are. And you must know the difference. And you must note that difference. When a person devalues you as an individual, they can throw crumbs at you and you celebrate it. When a person values you as an individual, they say, what are you genuinely worth? And let's talk about that. I'm yet to hear that from any political leader in this country. To honestly look at our people and say, what are you genuinely worth as Guyanese? Now we have billions and trillions of dollars floating around. What are you really worth? I dare say, as I allow you to speak, I say this. If ever Guyanese are given what Dr. Thomas and others would have been, Professor Thomas and others have been fighting for, including me, if ever you empower every Guyanese, African, Indian, American, and others, the PNC and the PP shall be non-existent. I promise you that. Because they both lead by dependency, not value.
Lincoln Lewis, from Linden to Quindon Bacchus, on this 184th anniversary of the end of legal enslavement, what's your message for your African Guyanese brothers and sisters?
I believe
Lincoln?
strongly.
Yeah.
I believe strongly the African community has to hold hands in this process here to fight back on the grounds we have lost and the holes that are being dug for us. We have to make sure that those holes are not dug. You know, I earlier in my presentation I spoke about what is happening with the young people when we look at 10 years ago when they struggled at Linden, what has occurred. And those who are 8 then are 18 now, and those who are 10 there are 20. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of work right now to let them understand their Africanness. On many occasions, the issue here is not because they are not qualified for a job or they're not competent to do a job, but because of their Africanness, their blackness. And you can't change yourself. And you can't, if you are going to compromise your position for a mess of pottage, you're doing it not only to yourself, you're doing it to the clan, you're doing it to your family, you're doing it for your generation to come. If our forebears who fought that abominable system of slavery, if they had done that, all of them had done that, and don't prepare to, as a sizable portion of them were not prepared to fight, hold hands and fight, all of us who are here today would have born in slavery. Sharma reminded us earlier that that slavery was the legal thing. What they are doing now to us is not legal. If we fight the legal thing, why we can't fight the illegal one? And that's what I want to call on this generation to do. Let us fight this illegal system that is being imposed on us. Let this be the beginning. Let this emancipation be the beginning of the next journey to rid ourselves from what is taking place, what these guys are to do to us. Thank you.
Apostle London, your emancipation message.
Thank you to my fellow descendants of Africans. Let us remember that the United Nations would have met and agreed that the decade ending in 2025 was supposed to be focused on us, because they acknowledged that though slavery would have been considered abolished for so long, the descendants of slaves are yet to benefit, genuinely so, from any degree of reparation. As a result of that, I encourage every Guyanese this time around not to celebrate emancipation, but to demand reparation. There's nothing worth celebrating if you're not being rewarded for your suffering. What is there to celebrate? That every year, if an Ali or whoever is at the helm can get up there and make speeches without honoring their commitments? What is it to celebrate? When we've got, for example, the best school in Linden in Region 10, deemed the best, Mackenzie High School, the entrance to it is a swamp. What's there to celebrate? When our children are being told by the Minister of Education and parents are being told that all you're worth maybe $30,000, $150 US. That's what y'all are worth. What's there to celebrate? When our young men like Finn and Bacchus, or in Boston and others, when the young man whose mother is a reporter for Saarbrück News was shot in the mouth, a bullet hit him in his face by members of the Ghana police force. What is there to celebrate if we have got a Caucasian ambassador and a British High Commissioner here, and neither of them can demand honestly that we receive our reparation? If you cannot reward us for what we've suffered, there's nothing to celebrate. This is time for us to retaliate, to say that if you do not respect what the UN said, you're not going to lead us any longer. And I applaud the Surinamese not for doing that, but for, in essence, saying to their leaders, no more. I have nothing to celebrate on the 1st of August, because the slave masters got insurance and got benefits and said that they're losing financially, and they got billions of dollars worth of payment for my forefathers because they were freed. I do not celebrate emancipation. I recall enslavement. I recall injustice. And every 1st of August, I vowed until my family receive what they should, I will fight until I die for my African brothers and sisters to get their due. I don't want to hear a speech from Irfan Ali. Irfan Ali cannot talk to me about emancipation. Sorry for getting mad, Mr. Hinds, but I don't play with this part. Ali, Jagdio, Nandalal, find somebody else. Ramson, you can talk to me. Don't even risk talking to me about emancipation. You are modern slave masters. You pseudo slave masters. And you cannot address the African community because you're racist, based on what I've observed. With your one Guyana garbage, it should be flushed down the deepest cesspool. And Africans must unite. Africans must rise. And Africans must understand that though we can unite with every other ethnicity, we should never degrade ours. If I have to be a lesser African to be considered a good companion of any other ethnicity, leave me to be a whole African. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pastor London and Brother Lincoln Lewis. Thank you all so much for coming on tonight. To our brother Sharma Solomon, who got some technical problems and so couldn't be joining us. Thank you, my brother, for coming on. I think we have made a very strong statement as we reflected on what happened in Linden 10 years ago. Onward with the struggle. The struggle continues as it must, because there are always those who are lurking in the shadows, waiting to catch us off guard and to fling us back into the bosom of the plantation. Thank you all very much. My brothers, thank you very much. Brother Lincoln, thank you very much. And to you, our audience, I love you all so much. I love you all so much, because without you, there is no me. We can stand on our own. If we don't have people who are following, then we are not in the struggle. Tomorrow night, we'll be back. We'll be back. Be good, reflect on ourselves. We are intellectuals. Do not throw away intellectualism, because the basis of human progress lies in the basis of human progress is our ability to intellectualize. Tomorrow night, I'll be back.